¿Cómo se dice mariposa en inglés? You say lift or elevator. ¿Seguro? Of course, you see. Both go floor to floor. Para fiestas y posadas. Previous video I covered cardinal numbers, just numbers to count, 1, 2, 3, 4, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. And I made a few little notes. Now we're going to continue with numbers, but now it's ordinal numbers. After ordinal numbers, I'll cover fractions, and then I'll make a note about decimal numbers. One of them is a grammatical note or punctuation. But here we go. So ordinal numbers. Ordinal numbers are the numbers that we use to position things, to order things. In what order are they? Or did they arrive, etc. So this would be your first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, etc. So we're going to have primero, segundo, tercero, cuarto, quinto, sexto, séptimo, octavo, noveno, décimo. Now, really quick, in the other video I also talked about differentiation versus ceseo. So I just pronounced them with ceseo, which means that if you see a C-I-C-E, you're just going to pronounce it as if it were an S. For example, here. In differentiation, which is what is used mostly in Spain, and usually only Spaniards do this, this is going to be that lisp, similar to a TH in the word thought. So, ceseo, this is décimo. Diferenciación, differentiation, this would be décimo. So this would be tercero, and that would be the difference. So tercero, décimo. If you see an S, it's going to be an S. So these over here, to emphasize the difference, we would have décimo, décimo primero, or undécimo, sorry, stress here. Either one of these, so these both have two names, so this could be décimo segundo or duodécimo, and then you have décimo tercero, décimo cuarto. My recommendation is use the top ones, and the reason why I recommend using the top ones is then the pattern just continues. It's the same pattern. So you have décimo primero, décimo segundo, décimo tercero, décimo cuarto, and notice these are synthesized because there's one main stress, right? The intonation. There's just one main intonation there where it changes, or one spot where it changes, which is why they synthesize. Now, something very, very important is you might hear some Spanish speakers colloquially confuse the... Now, I'm saying confused. It's just part of their dialect, really. They're not using the academic forms, or maybe they are confusing them. Go ahead and put in the comments. What do you think? Do you think people are just confusing them? Maybe nobody taught them, and that's the reason why, so they come to that conclusion. But what ends up happening is with ordinal numbers and fractions, anything involving threes is going to be the same, 4s, 5s, 6, 7, 8, 9s, and even 10s. The difference is you would say 1 of a third, 1 of 4. So let me use an English example. So in English, we say third place, 1/3, and that's exactly it. So that's the difference in Spanish. It's the 1 and then the third. So 4th place, 1/4. 5th place, 1/5. So we do the same thing in Spanish, but because tercero, cuarto, quinto, sexto, séptimo, octavo, noveno, décimo, these are the same, then some people overextend the rule beyond 10. So instead of saying décimo primero, which is the first of the tens, second of the tens, third of the tens, they will say this over here. They will say, where did it go? Here we go. They will say, for example, treceavo instead of décimo tercero. Or they'll say doceavo instead of décimo segundo. Because these are different words. You have the suffix here, avo, which makes it the fraction. So that's something to keep a note, but we'll cover those in a bit. Let me just go back to these. So again, going to positions, everything up to 1/10 is pretty straightforward, and then 11 to 19 as far as positions. Just remember it's one word, and it's going to start with décimo, and then whatever that 1 through 9 number. And that's very important, so the 1 through 9 number. Another thing is remember the O drops. If what you're numbering follows with primero, so for example, él es el primero versus él es el primer corredor, right? So just think of like él es bueno, él es un buen hombre. So you drop that ending. Just keep that in mind with primero. Now, if you need to compensate for grammatical gender, just replace the O's for A's and you're good. So it'd be primera, segunda, tercera, cuarta, quinta, sexta, séptima. Now, an important note to make as well is in the feminine grammatical gender, some individuals you will hear will drop the A, so I'll say la primer casa, like the first house versus la primera casa. Feminine generally doesn't drop a vowel, but just keep that in mind. You might hear both. Now that we covered 19th, pretty straightforward, we're going to go to 20th place. So 20th place would be vigésimo. And then if it's 21st place, you just add those 1 through 9 numbers, and that's it. So vigésimo primero, vigésimo segundo, vigésimo tercero, vigésimo cuarto, vigésimo quinto, vigésimo sexto, vigésimo séptimo, vigésimo octavo, vigésimo noveno. And it's just the pattern. The pattern just continues throughout. And then 30th place, not that you are ever going to use 30th place. Really, I mean, most people won't. Maybe you will. But most people probably won't, because we stop carrying after 3, right? Gold medal, silver medal, bronze, and even then, bronze is questionable sometimes. I'm kidding. But this is the way you would say them. So you would have trigésimo, so trigésimo. And then again, the 1 through 9 number just follows in a separate number. Cuadragésimo, quincuagésimo, sexagésimo, septuagésimo, octogésimo, nanogésimo, centésimo, centésimo primero, and again those 1 through 9 numbers just apply, and then once you go beyond the 1 through 9 numbers, then the other rule applies and you just add it to the hundreds. So 110th place would be centésimo décimo. This is the 100th, 10th, and then you could say 111, so then it would be centésimo décimo primero. And that's it. And the pattern just, it's a recurring pattern. You just have to memorize these. And if you want much larger numbers, you would have these over here. And I do find them somewhat interesting and funny because you're probably never going to really use them. Unless it was, hey, this is an interesting fact. What would you call the 400th place? And then you would say, oh, what is it? Well, it's cuadringentésimo. Right? So let me just go over them all. So this would be ducentésimo, tricentésimo, cuadringentésimo, quingentésimo, sexengésimo, septingentésimo. So wherever you see the stress mark, make sure you stress that syllable. And that's where your intonation is going to change, but also your inflection too. Octingentésimo, noningentésimo, milésimo, millonésimo, Billonésimo. And that's it. Now, as far as fractions, this is where sometimes the confusion can take place. So if we look at fourth, cuarto, quinto, notice they sound just like the ordinal numbers. Fourth, fifth. The thing is, there's the 1/4, 1/5. And this is the way it works. So you have uno, which is just one, or uno entero, one whole, un medio, una mitad, just half portion, un tercio, 1/3, un cuarto, un quinto. Now, if you have more than 1/2, more than 1/3, you just change the number in front and you make the second number plural. So you make the fraction plural and then you change the first one. So notice a whole number is just a whole number. It's just uno, dos, tres, just like you were counting, right? Uno, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco. And then you can say whole, uno entero, one whole, dos enteros, two whole. And in Spanish, you would make them plural if they are plural. So if it's plural, make it plural. But if we look at this, notice dos, that refers to this one. So that's the nominator. And then the denominator, medios, or mitades. Depending if you want what it is that you're referring to. Now, let's see. So, dos medios. This is just two halves, versus this would be two parts. Think about it that way. And if you say two parts and two halves, that's the same thing. Similar, quite similar. This is probably going to be two halves of the same thing, so the same orange, as opposed to two halves of a centimeter or a millimeter. Now, if we go over here, we have dos tercios. Again, nominator, denominator. Dos cuartos, dos quintos. So now, tres, that's the first three. So it's the first number is going to be your numerator, second number is going to be your denominator. And you just run with the pattern. So if you had 1/8, un octavo, now if you had two, just replace this front number, you would add dos and make it plural. So dos octavos, add an S to it. So we have un sexto, un séptimo, un octavo, un noveno, un décimo, un onceavo, un doceavo, and it's here on fourth where many Spanish speakers make a mistake, because these are similar, like I said, to 6th place, 7th place, 8th, so they'll assume they're the same for 11th, and historically it probably has been more common to describe things in portions, 1/2, 1/8, as opposed to enumerating things, or lining things up, I should say, in an order, placing things in an order. That's the reason why I think many Spanish speakers will use the fractions instead of the ordinal numbers, but not vice versa. That's the reason why. So keep that in mind. Now, fractions, when it comes to fractions, there's going to be a note here in a bit. But you have, for example, 2,5, 3,55. And what you do is you just say the first number, whatever it is, and then you say the punctuation, in this case, comma, and then you say whatever number follows. This would be 5, 55, 555. So, 2, 5, 3, 55, 4, 555. And one quick note, in the United States generally uses a period, so they're backwards, or they're the other way. So just keep that in mind. Commas and periods are different in Spanish than they are in English. And when I say in Spanish compared to English, I'm not sure about Mexico. I'm not sure if Mexico has adopted the U.S. standard. And the reason why I say this is I remember there was a brand of Sabritas, which is the Mexican Lay's potato chips. Sonris? I forget the brand. I would have to look. I want to say it's Sonris, but I could be wrong. They have that little happy face. It's almost like a little ramen face. But I remember when I was much younger going over there, and you would see, for example, 10,50 pesos, meaning 10 pesos 50 cents. So that would be a 10.50. But I want to say this is somewhat recently. Now they're doing point. So they'll do 10.50. So it'll be a dot or a point there. And I find that interesting. So I'm not sure if they changed the standard or didn't really agree on a standard, or somebody was saying, hey, you're using the American English standard, you should use the Spanish standard, and then some people just didn't follow it. So I'm kind of curious about that. But if you ever see, for example, 2,5, this would be your decimal, equivalent to the US 2.5. So if you're a fan of a 5.0, Spanish grammar would be 5,0. Keep that in mind. So that being said, this is all for decimals, fractions, and ordinal numbers. Thank you very much for watching, and please subscribe if you have not, and I'll catch you in the next one.